I came into Duke having never coded in my life. My entire freshman year, I was just an economics major. I only learned how to code my sophomore year.
What I read or saw somewhere that you wanted to impress girls in your classroom, was it that like just a PR stunt?
That really, we went from 2,000 downloads in 8 months to 2,000 downloads in 2 weeks, thanks to Guess My Sorority, to now 10,000 downloads in the span of a week. Posted it, Karan Johar liked it. That got it into Alia Bhat's feed, and then Alia Bhat ended up commenting on it. We made it to the App Store's top charts.
So hello everyone, today I am in Bay Area with Dhruv. He's the founder of Style App. I've seen so many of your videos on TikTok and Instagram, and I'm fascinated by how a simple app and so yet entertaining for women. It's fashion app for women. It's Tinder for clothing for women. It's an amazingly built app, and you just sold it for more than $1 million, millions of dollars in Bay Area before graduating. It's fascinating. We want to know about it. So can you please introduce yourself?
Thank you, Hedonic. Yeah, sure. My name is Dhruv Bindra. I grew up in India all my life, came to the US about 4 years ago to study at Duke University. I studied economics and computer science there. And in my sophomore year, so my second year, got the idea for this fashion app with a friend of mine and been building it for the last 2 years. And as you mentioned, we were very lucky. We got the opportunity to sell it a few months ago.
Excellent. First of all, I want to know about your journey coming to the US. So at what point of time you realized that you wanted to be an entrepreneur and a student in the US?
Both my parents are founders, so growing up, dining table conversations are all about their startups. My dad's my hero as well. So I always knew I wanted to be a startup founder. As far as coming to the US goes, my oldest sister, she's about 4.5 years older than me, went to UCLA for undergrad, and she absolutely loved her experience. So she was definitely a big influence in me exclusively applying to the US when it came time for applying to college.
So both of your parents are entrepreneurs. So how was your childhood like?
Yeah, as I said, they were really good about always involving my sister and I in whatever day-to-day problems they were facing. I really don't think we were ever helpful, but just keeping us in the loop and asking for our opinion got us thinking and got our mind geared in a way where we started thinking about business from a very young age. And I mean, I spent a summer as well, I think in the 8th grade, where I just went with my dad to the office every day, just sat in the meeting room quietly. And when he was selling his business in 2021, just before I started my freshman year in college, I, again, silently sat with him in conference rooms throughout the entire acquisition process. And that kind of learning you just don't get anywhere else.
Totally. I mean, you got your, startup school. You lived basically in an incubator.
I guess you could call it that.
It's fascinating. And also, the way you said your childhood was, your parents did not give you, that, okay, this is the right way, this is the wrong way. They told you that, okay, so these are the 5 options you have, and let you explore those options rather than giving you, if you go to the water, you'll either swim or drown. But rather than telling you, they let you explore your options, right?
Yeah, and my mom is another incredibly inspiring story. She was a stay-at-home mom for over 20 years, and then she finally decided to build a startup for the women of India 5 years ago. And so that's been more in line with my own journey as a founder. So mom and I are kind of learning at the same pace. And now a lot of the things she doesn't understand, like social media, for instance, it's been really rewarding in the fact that I've been able to help her out with it. So it's been super fun. I make reels for her as well from time to time.
Excellent. So what's the first thing you build, and how many users you got, and if you made money through it, then yeah.
We never ever made money until the actual exit. The very, very first thing I built was in high school. It was like a Shark Tank for student social initiatives.
In India, in Delhi?
In India. So I emailed a bunch of Indian CEOs. I think we had 11 CEOs with a combined net worth of upwards of $1 billion. Some really, really great folks on board. And then we had corporate CSR funds as well that we pooled together as cash prizes. And what I basically saw is a lot of kids were coming up with really good social initiatives, but investors were really very wary about giving money to young kids, right? So try to bridge that gap. Really cool experience. Never intended to make money, never made money. I did a COVID fundraiser as well. That was the most startup-esque experience, but all the money we made, we donated to COVID relief organizations in India. When I came to Duke, I was working on a fintech company for India my freshman year. That did not work out either. And then style was the next thing I started that thankfully worked out in some way.
So the first app, Shark Tank, for the Indian market through an app.
It wasn't an app. It was just an organization that I built.
Oh.
Style was the first app ever. By the way, I came into Duke having never coded in my life. My entire freshman year, I was just an economics major. I only learned how to code my sophomore year.
Interesting. So the organization you built was before Shark Tank India was launched. So not many people in India knew about Shark Tank.
I guess not, yeah.
So you were way ahead in the game.
I think people knew about Shark Tank from like the US, but yeah, I guess Shark Tank India was not out yet.
So what kind of content you were consuming in your childhood that entrepreneurship focus, so you are becoming the product of your surroundings,
No, I was watching like YC videos for while eating dinner like every day, at least towards like the end of high school for sure. Like I did startup school as well, even though it was just a few courses. Read like 0 to 1 by Peter Thiel when I was a kid, like everyone does. So definitely.
Wait, is that a joke?
No, not at all. Like I was playing pretend founder for a really long time, but I would be like watching podcasts and reading like PG essays, like imagining one day I would be a founder. But it was like the real hustle of it is so different than reading about it. But that experience only came about like 4 years later.
Oh my God! For a second it felt like you're just joking about it.
No.
So I've never seen like high school students reading these books, especially in India. And so you were the only one in your class like focused on entrepreneurship at a young age, or like you had all your classmates in Delhi also like that?
No, honestly, my high school was fantastic, and the kids 2 years older than me were like a huge influence on me as well. And those kids are like today very, very successful startup founders themselves. Like at least 3 of them, all 3 2 years older than me, have independently created companies that are like massive now.
Wow. So right now, I mean, what I can clearly see is like, when I made a lot of videos about Indian American students, a lot of people commented, oh, you're the product of your surroundings. And those surroundings are possible in India too. People just don't believe. So can you elaborate more on on that environment that you had in Delhi in your school that was very entrepreneurship focused that actually led to the path?
So I went to the Shriram school, which is one of India's top high schools anyway. So I think I got very lucky in that I was a product of my surroundings. I was just, through the lottery of birth, I think, very lucky to be in a better high school than the like average Indian high school you'd have. And a lot of the kids who attend that high school have parents who are either in like family businesses or startups themselves. So kind of like a waterfall effect of down the generations. Now everyone's thinking and talking about startups. And I also think like startups is like the new cool thing. Like in 2008, if you were like, graduating from a top college in the US, you'd be going to like a McKinsey or a Goldman Sachs, and that was the cool thing. In 2025, if you're especially like in the West Coast, and what is cool is now joining a startup. I think funnily enough, joining like McKinsey is kind of looked down upon these days. So it's a bunch of all of those factors.
Totally. I mean, you can see that like, even Harvard graduate MBA students are not finding a job in 3 months, which is not clear. By the way, I read more about that data that, is it true that McKinsey hype has gone down? When I narrowed it down further, I figured out some students actually wait till they find their dream job and then choose it. It's not just, causation, correlation.
Yeah.
It's by choice as well.
Okay.
Quickly, 2 important messages for all students. If you have taken loan to come to the US, if it is in US dollars, it's worth it. Even if you are an F1 visa, H1B visa, to refinance it, because many students on Reddit reported, on X reported that their interest rate dropped to less than half, less than 7%. Some people have interest rate more than 10%. They take through Prodigy Finance or other places. You can reduce it to 5 to 7% with SoFi, because with SoFi, irrespective of your visa, you can refinance immediately in just one step with the link in description below. And even if you want to open the bank account, that's completely optional. You can check out the link as well. Number 2 is, if you are coming to the US, if you haven't tried Mint Mobile, you have to try right now, because starting at just $15 per month, you get unlimited 5G, unlimited calling, unlimited text messages, and roaming in US, Canada as well. So what are you waiting for?
Enticing, right?
Whenever I go to India, I just add additional roaming, and it's almost my 5th year starting with Mint Mobile, and it's my favorite career provider in the US. Go check out both in the description below.
So now, okay, coming back to your journey. So I want to learn more about building style now. So you said you built a couple of organizations, you had entrepreneurship, you had hang of it, you've read the right books. And how did you start building style? Did you build from a coder point of view first or from a founder point of view?
Oh, not at all. So I first started the company with not Rahul, my current co-founder, but one of my other really good friends who was with us for a year, and then we parted ways very amicably. He just wanted to do like VC stuff after. But it was actually his idea, and neither one of us could code, but we were just excited with this whole like Tinder for clothes idea. Read machine learning papers that we barely understood, but it seemed as if having this Tinder-like interface was a great UX primitive to collect lots of rich data about user preferences. And ultimately, someone who understood machine learning could leverage that data to build a hyper-personalized fashion experience. That was our contention. The question is, would users be happy with a swiping interface, or does it feel really artificial? And so you don't need to know how to code for that. My co-founder, that initial co-founder was great at Figma. So I had like a close friend story on Instagram that I put up, and I like put like all the girls I was like friends or acquaintances with onto that list. And I was like, if you guys are interested in like being beta users for my app, please reply back. About 35 girls did. And we would meet them once a week in our dining halls, basically being their stylists, understanding what brands they shop from, what's their general vibe, curating like 100 items every week that they would like, and then putting it manually on a Figma prototype, putting that in front of them and getting them to swipe. And eventually that Figma prototype turned into a very, very basic like front-end mechanic where thankfully we started logging the item IDs and their swipe data. And every week we'd run that through a very basic clustering algorithm that got iteratively better in the following weeks until finally, I think, we really had to hunker down an entire summer. So 5 months later was when we came up with our first full-fledged app where these recommendations are happening in real time and autonomously.
So first you just started with Figma. You get to know your customer. You got to know your customer first. You followed the Peter Thiel principles, and you were so close to the customer because you were literally in the environment. You have sororities at Duke. You had girls around you. What I read or saw somewhere that you wanted to impress girls in your classroom. Was it that like just a PR stunt?
No, that was a complete joke.
So now you got to know your customer and you spent 5 months building. That was in Bay Area or in Duke?
All at Duke. Both the summers, my sophomore year summer, so 2023 and 2024 summers, the whole co-founding team, which was initially 3, then it went down to 2, we were in SF the entire time. But for the rest of it, we were doing this part-time while we were students at Duke.
So what is the difference between building at Duke in a student-led environment versus in a founder-led environment like San Francisco?
There's pros and cons. At Duke, the feedback loops are a lot faster because I can just go to my dining hall, show it to a user, and get feedback really quickly. At San Francisco, there was a lot more focus. So it ended up being a great blend where like 2023 summer was just pure heads down building. And then as soon as we went back to college, we now had like rapid feedback loop cycles where we'd like put it in front of users, get feedback, iterate on it over the weekends or at nights in the weekdays, and then like kept going back and slowly improving the product. But we built up such a long list of things we wanted to implement. Then when the 2024 summer came rolling around, we had all the bandwidth finally to implement those ideas.
Excellent. And in your approach, I want to ask you, like, did you have the end goal in your mind? Like, why were you building? Was it like, you were thinking that with that machine learning you implemented, that data at the end can give you, a sellout opportunity like you have right now. Was that goal visible?
No, not in terms of an exit at all. I always went in with the mentality of like, I straight out of college want to be building my own thing. When I first started, I never thought it would be style. I always thought it would be like an industry that I was naturally more interested in, like education. But I think through the course of it, it's probably you just develop the sort of dogma that you just cannot break out of, where your company becomes your baby, and then you just cannot imagine like ever giving up on your child, right? So yeah, if you ask me like a year into building style, am I going to do this full time, or am I going to do this for the next 10 years of my life? My answer unequivocally would have been yes. But we got very, very lucky with this exit opportunity kind of just like entering the picture.
I mean, as in the Steve Jobs documentary which I've read, it's written that you can always reverse engineer the dots backwards but not forward.
Yeah.
So now when you were building stuff, when you were getting the feedback but not many users, how did you think about marketing it?
So we did what was most accessible to us, which is campus marketing. So campus marketing, the good thing is it's a pure hustle play. We printed out 2,000 QR codes and a Duke in front of every dorm room. The names of students are written. If it was a slightly feminine sounding name, we just slip a QR code underneath the door. We also came up with really funny puns for every single building. And we had like personalized like posters with those funny puns and QR codes attached that we pasted all across campus. So I think like we took one weekend out, probably finished the ink in like every Duke library printer there was, and got like all of our users from that period were just like Duke girls who like got it through these QR codes. None of our TikToks used to do well in the early days.
Well, because I personally got to know through TikTok and Instagram as well. I thought, oh, this guy is making big, making viral videos, and like that's his first attempt and making big. But people don't see the, behind the scenes effort. It was your 5th or 6th attempt in marketing, right?
Much more than that. So the story was like, it was campus marketing that like helped us. We focused really a lot on the product, then built this thing called guessmysorority.com, which is a whole other story. And then finally the breakout strategy was making our own videos.
Okay, so let's break that down step by step. First of all, when you were like marketing by putting the QR code outside every girl's dorm room, it's called soliciting. It's not allowed in most campuses. Unofficially.
Break rules while you don't even know they exist, right?
Okay, so what was the next thing you tried?
So the next breakout strategy was this website, guessmysorority.com, where I could see that our Duke users, we had sorority girls disproportionately retaining more, which made sense, right? These girls are going out more often, they want new clothes more often, therefore they'll be on a shopping app more often. So the question was, how do I get every sorority girl in the US to download our app? I noticed that sorority Instagram pages follow back the girls in their organizations. So over winter break, I scraped 1.3 million accounts, and I basically had my own database of every sorority girl in the US. Then I created this website, guessmysorority.com, where you log in with Google, answer some funny questions, and swipe on 5 items of clothing. And at the end, we guess your sorority. But the whole thing was just an elaborate magic trick, because when you log in with Google, we use the Levenstein distance algorithm, where 90% of the times we know the correct answer. We just pretend as if we're asking you all these questions so we can impress you with the strength of our algorithms. And when we give you the result and the user is like shocked by it, we then are like, you would love our app if you're impressed by our algorithms on this website. Download style the Tinder for clothes.
Wow, that is fascinating. Because first of all, you said all the sorority girls, they follow almost everyone, which are public accounts, and you can see all the public accounts they follow. They're in like the group, and like you can, from one girl to the other girl, you can find all the following list of people and then figure out, oh, these are sororities. But in that data, there might be some, outliers. So how did you exclude those outliers?
You don't have to, right? Because
Really?
it's an exclusion error, not an inclusion error. That is to say that if of this list of 1.3 million accounts that I had, all I have to do is find a match for Harnoor Singh. It doesn't matter if I have like Priyanka Chopra there as well. When I bring a search for Harnoor Singh, that's the only like query I want a result back for.
So the goal was not to have like, smaller data to optimize search. The goal was to just do brute force search no matter what.
Exactly, yeah. And as long as the actual users had the correct sorority affiliation next to it, it didn't matter. And also to be clear, we didn't scrape individual user accounts. It was just like Alpha Feed Duke would have their own following list, and we just scraped those because those are all public. And it was very, very hard because Instagram, like you need to use proxy rotators and stuff as well, but we got around it.
Proxy rotators?
Yeah.
What are those?
So basically on Instagram, if you try to just build a bot where locally you're going to be deploying something to be scraping it, you're going to get blocked. Your IP is going to get blocked as well. So proxy rotators are just a service where it's like alternating IP addresses to be able to scrape it. So
like Tor browser.
yeah, but we use like this really shady Russian service that has like rotating proxies that it keeps hitting Instagram's endpoints with.
Wow. It was a lot of effort. So in your team, you had 2 engineers and you were leading the product, right? Or 1 engineer?
So my co-founder Rahul
Uh-huh.
was focused on the app efforts. I was doing some backend. Initially, I used to do all scraping. Used to do database as well. But my real like focus was just on like growth marketing. And then in the summer, that's when we hired two full-time engineers from India. And we had a student intern as well who was just on a volunteer basis from the University of Florida helping us out.
So all is bootstrap. You didn't raise a fund in this entire journey so far.
We won some money from Duke. So we had like an accelerator, a grant, some pitch competitions. So we kept pooling together that money, and that's what allowed us to afford living in San Francisco. But yeah, applied to accelerators in 4 different cycles, rejected every single time.
Oh, so you applied to YC, Techstars?
Everything.
What else?
We didn't do Techstars. We did YC 4 times. We did Pair, we did Contrary, we did Dorm Room Fund, we did all the early pre-seed. We restarted some institutionals. We tried everything in our power.
Oh, wow. So how did you kept going? Like, first of all, your marketing efforts weren't going well, and then you were getting rejected by all these pre-seed funds. What kept you going? Why? What was the reason you were building it? If someone asked you why you're building, what would you say?
I think it's really the emotional reason, which is like, it very much feels like your kid and you don't want to give up on your kid. So in all honesty, it was probably a little bit of that, along with the naivety of thinking if you just keep at it, things will work out. Day in, day out, that was the emotional response. I think the logical response is also, despite the failures, I was learning so much, not like the soft skills of like resilience, like active, tangible, hard skills. While building Guess My Sorority, I became a much better engineer, right? So I never felt like I was wasting my time, even if I didn't have any like external signals to prove this was a success. The journey itself was very valuable.
Now, continuing with the marketing, you had a great vision. So at what point of time you got the inflection and sudden hike in users? You did not get through Guess My Sorority. You did not get through promoting on the campus. So what was that inflection point?
Yeah. So Guess My Sorority, we got 1.2 million page impressions in less than 2 weeks, all organic, but the download click-through rate was like sub 2%. So what happened was, it was this immediate euphoria of, oh my God, you can see people were making conspiracy theory TikToks. We became a trending search term in the US. It was amazing to feel like I finally built a consumer product that was entering the cultural zeitgeist. But then immediately it was like, the slowest pitfall where I was like, shit, man, maybe style was just a bad idea and actually I'm not like an incompetent founder. So that's when I sat Rahul down. I was like, Rahul, you've done everything right and built an awesome product. I have failed in marketing this. I took out an A4 size sheet and I wrote like 8 or 9 things that I wanted to try out before shutting the company down. And the 5th or 6th thing was, despite thinking that as a brown guy, I can't be making videos about a fashion app for American women, I was like, let me just try this, right? And yeah, I tried that out. I got so lucky. The very first video got 500K on TikTok. It got only 21K on Instagram, but I had another Instagram account where I used to post educational blockchain videos. So what I did was, it barely had, I think, something like 500 to 2,000 followers, something like that, mostly my friends, but a very regular cadence of uploading, because I was, I think, 3 times a week putting up these reels. So I archived all those videos, changed the username and profile to another style account, and reposted the same thing. Because in my head, I'm like, TikTok is proof this is good content. It hasn't done well on Instagram because factors outside of my control. Let me give it more surface area for the luck of going viral. And that paid off. That video got 4.1 million views, something, or 3.9 million views, something like that. But yeah, that really, we went from 2,000 downloads in 2 months, 2,000 downloads in 8 months, to 2,000 downloads in 2 weeks, thanks to Guess My Sorority, to now 10,000 downloads in the span of a week. We made it to like the App Store's top charts, and that was the biggest confidence boost we needed. And then after that, I was very maniacal about treating each reel as a science experiment, where every hook was a hypothesis, the video formats, the lighting, everything was just, I was very, very data-driven about it. And slowly, as I kept iterating on it, I found my style. And that ended up just being a repeatable format for us to continue to acquire users.
So can you break down the marketing strategy? How did you understand the data? Because a lot of marketing is something every company has to do through social media now. And everyone can use this data, how to understand it. Can you elaborate on that?
So eventually what I will say is you develop an intuition for these things. So what I'm about to tell you is just things I used as a crutch in the very early days. But what I figured out on TikTok was you can see the user drop off per second. TikTok has much better creator tools than Instagram.
Yeah, I have used it. It's unfortunate that it's getting banned, but yeah, go ahead.
If I pass the 5-second mark with over 50% of my audience retained, that video always crossed 100,000 views. So the question was, how do I keep 50% of my audience for the first 5 seconds? So then what I would do is I had like an Excel sheet where I would have, again, I forget, I think it was like the copy that I used, so like the text that I used, the video format, is it like someone's recording me? Is it just me recording it on my face? Where are the captions going? Like all these different design decisions that I made. And I would try to record like this very similar content, but just pulling one lever at a time. And I would track how is it doing on TikTok in 24 hours? How is it doing on Instagram in 24 hours? And eventually you see, oh, videos where I'm just holding the camera as if I'm on FaceTime end up doing significantly better. Videos where I'm adding my captions, probably because people can't understand my accent, end up doing significantly better, right? And slowly you like, again, everything is a hypothesis in a science experiment. So as you keep validating and invalidating these hypotheses, you just develop something that starts working a lot better. And then the real sauce is in figuring out when you've cracked one format, how can you keep making the same video over and over again without boring your audience? So I'll give you an example, right? With this first video I made, the punchline that I think really got people commenting and sharing was something like, we're a couple of brown dudes building a women's fashion app. Please save us, right? And so from then I was like, okay, people find it really interesting that this dichotomy is there of an Indian guy building a women's fashion app. How can I play on that more? I learned that Alex Earl was this really big, like very famous fashion influencer that all the sorority girls look up to. She's like this blonde girl who, of course, is never the kind of like person to pop up on my feed, right? So I never knew about this influencer, but apparently she has a cult-like following. So what I did was, I was like, okay, I have this 40-second script that worked out really well. All I need is a funny hook to then put this 40-second script back in. So my hook became a series of day 1, day 2 of asking Alex Earl to be my co-founder. It would take me 5 seconds to say that. I immediately caught the attention of my audience. It's like, I know Alex Earl, I love Alex Earl. What do you mean you want her to be your co-founder, right? Followed by the exact same script. What is style? The joke that I'm a brown guy building a women's fashion app. And the fact that it was a series meant that every single day I could be making the same video and people would forgive me for it, right? And that did so well for us. I think till date, like our second most viewed TikTok was the Day 2 series where like Megan Trainor commented on it. Bobby Altoff was like memeing us as well. Like it was just really, really cool. And then what I did was once that series ended, over the summer, I came up with another way to have the same script again, where what I did was I had a series of not shaving my mustache until we hit 100,000 downloads. So every day, I'd look at the camera and be like, day 15 of not shaving my mustache till we hit 100,000 girls download my app. And I'd be explaining the same thing while shaving upwards. I'd keep cutting myself. People would be commenting saying, stop shaving like the wrong way. I was doing it as like a little clickbait, but I was getting the same message across. And that series went on for 35 days. So you see how like that same script concept, I was able to pump out like 50 videos without boring my audience.
But okay, so you said that you were copying the same clip. No, you were refilming by saying the same things again.
Correct.
It was unique content, but saying the same stuff over and over again. I remember one of the reel you made in which you said, what is the probability of Alia Bhat downloading our app and watching this? That got you so many downloads in India as well. We did not even target. So how was that story?
That was crazy. That's actually one of my favorite stories to tell. So I'm glad you asked. So I wanted to post 2 to 3 videos every day. One video was it was so convenient, it was going to be this shaving video. One video was typically like a behind the scenes Rahul and I video. So this third thing was really like, what's going to happen, right? I didn't have a content calendar. My rule was in my Airbnb, I would get hot water for about 10 to 12 minutes. I would step into the shower with this objective. I want to step out with a video idea in mind. If I didn't get the video by the 10th or 11th minute, the anticipation of the cold water hitting my face would release, I don't know what kind of dopamine, but that would always give me like a video idea such that by the time I'm out, I know what it is that I want to record. one day it just happened to be this thought I carried into the shower of looking at my creator dashboard, seeing about 40% of our views on Instagram were for India. And so I came and I was like, what are the odds of Bollywood actresses watched our video? Told Rahul about this. He loves Alia Bhat. And I was like, cool, let's make a funny video just doing this. We posted it, Karan Johar liked it. That got it into Alia Bhat's feed, and then Alia Bhat ended up commenting on it. And the day she did that, I think the video went from 100K to over 1.5 million views.
Wow.
That was super cool.
That is mind-blowing. So you got attention from Bollywood celebrities just by making a story around.
Yeah.
This is mind-blowing. So now in this journey, what's the highest point of building style or your entrepreneurship journey and your lowest point?
Are you familiar with the concept of a hedonic treadmill?
No.
Okay, it's this philosophical idea that everything regresses to the same emotional baseline. So the guy who buys a new car eventually gets bored of that car and he wants an even fancier car the next time, right? As you keep achieving more things in life, it starts feeling normal after a period of time, so you keep aiming upwards. I don't think there is a particular high or low point, because the day that we got the 2,000 downloads in one day, I was like, oh my God, life cannot get better. When we hit 100K, I was like, I've dreamt of this moment every single day. Now looking back, I'm like, 100,000 downloads is nothing, right? Apps that are funded can get 100,000 downloads with one influencer post. So yeah, I really think there was no high and low. There was just waves that kept coming and going.
What about lowest point in your entrepreneurship journey? You have built so many things.
I think the YC rejection of the most recent application round was quite gut-wrenching. We got rejected straight off the application, and I think one of the partners saw either a tweet or a TikTok and cold emailed us, or not cold email, emailed us out of the blue, opening up an interview spot for us. Interview went super well. The last 3 questions were just if we give you an offer, would you drop out? We're like, yeah. He's like, you're sure you would drop out? We're like, yeah. We thought we had it in the bag. They typically get back to you within 24 hours. We got a bunch of really softball questions. Answered it, a little concerned. The day goes by, next day, the third day, 6 days later, we end up getting our rejection email, which is unprecedented. And in the rejection email, the reason was, I was supposed to graduate in December, and this was the fall batch, so just 3 months before graduating. And his recommendation was just build this while you're at school, and once you graduate, reapply, and that's when you should do it. And I love and respect this partner so much. Not only all the content he needs to consume as a high schooler about this guy, but he was so correct in taking that decision, because now I got to make my parents super happy by having a college degree. I loved the fact that I was back at college for my last semester and really got to make the most of it. And we're so fortunate that things ended up working out with style as well. And who knows what journey we would have been on if we got into YC that early on. But at least that day where we got rejected, it was a really tough moment.
But now you graduated. Before graduating, you sold the app instead of applying for YC.
Yeah.
So what changed your mind?
I can't say much right now, but the CEO who's bought it is someone who has built generation-defining companies, and I couldn't even believe I was sitting in the same room as him, let alone the fact that he saw interest in our company. When we come out of stealth, you'll understand why it was a no-brainer.
So it's about building stuff with the people you can learn the most from, and that's the path you chose. And this is no-brainer. I don't know, I can't even imagine when you will get this opportunity again. And especially the offer, you said you got millions of dollars. More than $1 million at least. So are you happy with the offer?
Yeah, I can't tell you how much, but yeah, very, very thankful.
Okay, and now living in Bay Area, you got acqui-hired. It's not just you got acquired, you got hired as well. You're working with them. And what is the most valuable thing that they saw in you, in your app, that they hired not just you, but also your app?
You have to ask them. I don't know why they made this mistake, but I would like to believe that they saw the hustle that Rahul and I put in, where despite the fact that we never got any external funding, we pushed our way through. In the summers, we were the run rate we had was $4 per meal. So we were eating canned tuna sandwiches and so happy while doing it, just because we loved building so much. And I think it was like those soft skills, in addition with the fact that we understand this market, we understand these users, we're still building in fashion. So there was a lot of like transferable things too. In terms of the app itself, I'd like to believe that they saw value in the brand we built out, how that's going to transfer over to tomorrow when I start making videos for this company. Some of those users will come along with us and all the data we collected. So I think users swipe close to 30 million times on a very tight data set of just 125 or 150,000 items. It's a sparse matrix, but it's still, I think, one of the most rich fashion data sets you'll get out there.
And along with that, they got talented guys like you with a lot of enthusiasm, so much appreciated. Now, tell me what skills brought you here? Like, if you had to look back on your journey, what are the few skills you can think of? If you did not have them, you wouldn't be here.
I think it can all be boiled down to, at the risk of sounding extremely cocky, because this comes from a massive place of privilege, the resilience. And the reason I say massive place of privilege is because if I had the pressure to have to apply for a job, or like I wouldn't have like food on the table or a roof over my head, there's no question of resilience, right? You're a product of your circumstance, you have to do it. I'm so lucky that my parents supported me, that like my college supported me, so I had the freedom to be able to take a bet on myself. But at that juncture, I would like to give Rahul and I some credit that we just never gave up. And the reason why that's the only skill that mattered is because we never went into it knowing anything about app dev, anything about social media, but it was just by sticking with it for long enough, we acquired all the other skills that were required in the process. And ultimately what you see is the cumulative net effect of all of those little things that we learned along the way.
Incredible. And if you had to think about what are the few like pieces of content that you consume, books you read that made you who you are today, what would you say?
So I'm a huge fan of podcasts and I'm a huge fan of like YouTube videos. So I think a lot of that gave me like soft inspiration in like my high school and early college days. During the building process, very little of the content I consumed translated over to like what I was building. It was really just like hit and tire with like your own stuff. But then post the acquisition, I've been reading some books that have been super helpful that I hope will be of use here. So I read the Steve Jobs biography. I read this incredible book by Fei-Fei Li, the godmother of AI, called The Worlds I See. It's like a history of AI combined with her own inspiring biography.
And breaking that down, she is the PhD lead for Andre Karpathy, right? It's her book, right?
Karpathy was a master's student under her, and she's the reason GenAI exists today, because when Karpathy first presented his project, he basically built this captioning system that captioned images based on the training data given to it. And Fei-Fei was like, this isn't that impressive. When he came back, it started captioning images with words not present in the training data set. So it was creating new labels, i.e. it was generative artificial intelligence. And Fei-Fei herself, incredibly successful. I think she just raised something like 330 million at $1 billion valuation in building. I think it's vision language models, so models that understand the physics of the real world. Yeah, she's incredible. Her story is super inspiring, but she also breaks down the evolution of AI over the course of the last few decades. So that was a very, very cool book. And I think I was like in my whole autobiography phase, because the third book that had a huge impact on me was when breath becomes air. It's the story of a neurosurgeon who ends up getting cancer. And I was also in a very like existentialist phase of my life. So I think that's why it resonated so deeply with me. But yeah, I definitely want to get a lot more into reading now.
I definitely agree with you. Reading, I think, makes you focus every single day. Like, in the beginning of your product, you are focused and driven by the product. But later on, I think you need something else. And by consuming long form podcasts or maybe reading good books, you're focused and you're reminded of your goal every single day. Do you agree? How does reading help you?
Yeah, I think it's tough to take the time out sometimes when Ben Horowitz says this really well in his book, The Hard Thing About Hard Things, of like, there's peacetime and there's wartime in startups. So during peacetime, yes, you have the flexibility to like go and read books to get inspired. But during wartime, there's really no time to think. And that all his style was really wartime. So it was only before and after that I had like the chance to consume content.
Excellent. Since you read Peter Thiel's 0 to 1 book in your high school, can you share, did you follow the exact mantra? Did you like follow a formula? Like he mentions like, creating a monopoly, like finding a small project in big market or big project in small market? And these kind of questions he recommends, 7 questions that he mentioned in the book. Did you follow those?
No, I have no idea what he said.
So even though you read his book, you just followed your guts.
Yeah, I mean, I read it like 6 years ago. I probably should reread it again, but I have no idea what the book says. All I remember is it was very inspiring.
So at the end of the day, you need to be obsessed over something which you care about, and all those, external motivations that you think of you need will not be needed. So what's something you obsess over the most? What are you excited for? What excites you in general?
I think building in consumer is really exciting. Watching something affect the day-to-day life of someone, it's a really cool experience. And it's never like a fashion app would change someone's life, but even bringing a little bit of joy into their days and hearing that user feedback has been like a really rewarding experience.
Incredible. Thank you so much, Dhruv. I hope everyone watching this video will be inspired by your journey and hope to build in college and make it big like you as well. Thank you again.
Thanks for having me, Hedonic.
Pleasure.